everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Everything Horror Podcast. I am your hostess, Tess Baker, and I am joined by my co-host,
Paul Doske.
And we are here tonight to talk with Caitlin Marceau.
Hey.
Yep. Go ahead.
Go ahead and say hello, Caitlin.
Hey, hi everyone.
So we are here to talk with Caitlin tonight for Women in Horror Month. And Caitlin is a writer.
Spooky writer.
A spooky writer.
Woo!
We were just looking over all of your various publications.
Collection.
Your collection is quite extensive. So Caitlin, why don't you tell us and our listeners a little bit about yourself and
what brought you into the horror genre?
Oh man, okay, so horror writer for several years now. I'm really fascinated with making Canadian horror specifically because I think when we think a lot about horror in general, it's really quick to think of, American horror or British horror. So I'm trying desperately to create like a Canadian canon for horror. It's really funny, I used to hate horror. I used to be scared of absolutely everything growing up. I mean everything. Like, we had a children's show in Canada called The Big Comfy Couch with clowns in it, and I used to just have nightmares about these clowns for children. And then just eventually I was so tired of being scared of everything that I think I just decided I wanted to do the scaring. And that's kind of how I got weirdly into horror. I just became fascinated and obsessed with making everyone else more afraid than I was.
Well, yeah. That's actually a really awesome story. I like that.
Thanks.
So, Caitlin, when it came to your writing, because you said mainly everything scared you at the time, and then you wanted to pretty much make the scariness come to us, like, your audience of reading and stuff. What actually triggered you to begin to really want to start writing your tales? Were you taking like any type of class at the time for writing or something, or did you read a specific book that pretty much made you go, I like this person's style of writing, maybe I could actually write something of my own? Or like what really made you have that writing bug?
So I've been wanting to write since I was younger. I didn't necessarily know that it was going to be in horror at first. I used to be absolutely enthralled with Tamora Pierce, and she was a young adult. Well, she still is a young adult fantasy author. So I actually went to school for writing. I went to Concordia University. I studied creative writing there, and not too long before I got into the program, I ended up getting an internship at a local newspaper. So I was writing and, working in journalism for a little while before I ended up making the change to horror. It was really while I was in university that I ended up getting into Stephen King, reading a lot of Bentley Little, and then I specifically found Kelly Armstrong. She's also a Canadian author. She writes a lot of horror specifically, and all of her work, or the majority of her work, tends to focus on strong female protagonists. And I thought that was really cool because instead of having, these final girls who are, being hunted by these monsters, a lot of her heroes were the monsters. And I just thought it was a really cool concept, and I couldn't stop reading them. I to this date, I think I own every single book or story she's published. Like, it's absolute madness. And that was really the inspiration to be like, okay, if she can create this amazing dynamic world with such rich and relatable characters, then there's no reason that I also couldn't get into this too. So while I was in university, I sunk my teeth into horror, if you will, and started, working in that industry and getting published before I graduated, which was the coolest experience ever.
Wow. Yeah. And it's good too that you were mentioning like a specific author, because that's usually how most people find someone or something, or whether it
that's
be
like a role model.
Yeah, like a role model, because their words or somebody's way of directing a film or something like just speaks to you in a way. It's like just grabs your attention, and it kind of doesn't want to let go because it's just fascinating to you, and it could just be really just the way they, like I just said, the word jump at you, or it could be just the way that this person had this way of shooting this dark scene, but there's like lights coming through, but you know what I mean? Like it's like that so suspenseful stuff or whatever it is that really grabs a hold of you, that makes you just go, I really like this person's work, and I just love the way the camera work is, or the way they just make books or whatever. I could go on with the same goddamn sentence, so I'll just shut up now.
I think my only regret is that I wish I had, because my mom, my mother and my dad growing up, they were both really into horror as well. My mom especially loved Stephen King her whole life, and she tried to get me to read him long before I finally did pick up a book. So I just wish I had, read his and then eventually found her stuff earlier, as opposed to waiting till I was older to discover it. But, it all worked out in the end, I guess.
That's great. So what was your first piece that you ever wrote, and what inspired it?
Okay, so it was actually this story called Stuck, and it was published in Sanitarium in, I forget the year, 2000 something. It was when Sanitarium was run by Barry Skellhorn, and I was taking a creative writing class with Trevor Ferguson, and he led one of the classes by saying you should never start your story with your character waking up. That it took readers out of it. It was like a lazy way of starting a story, and I disagreed. I decided that, I don't think he's wrong. To this day, he's probably one of the best authors I've ever read or had the fortune of learning from. But I wanted to challenge this idea that there was a hard and fast rule of what you could and couldn't do with a story. So I wrote Stuck about this. Essentially, it's this woman who wakes up dead. She laid down on the couch the night before and she passed away. And now it's early morning and her alarm is going off, and that sort of gets her attention. And she very quickly realizes that she can't move, and she's just very literally stuck in her body. So she's, she doesn't really have any agency in the story. She's just kind of the story happens to her. I wouldn't say she's an active agent in the story. And it's cool because you get to see her life unravel really around her, and all these relationships she thought she had developed and fostered over her lifetime. Some of the ones that she's given up are maybe some of the ones she should have held on to. Whereas some of the people that she made space for in her life turn out to be less kind and forgiving. So that was pretty much the inspiration for that story. And it's probably one of my favorites still.
Funny that you should mention it, and that being your first story, because I actually was going down your list of all your publications, and that's actually one of the things that I clicked on, and I was actually reading it before we called you. And it says that you did it back in August 20th of 2017.
Yeah.
The one with the alarm clock and the, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was actually reading that one.
Yeah. It was written earlier. It was written, I think it was published in 2017. It was written while I was in university, so it's a pretty old story. It was probably my first attempt at horror, at like really trying to get it out there.
Yeah, because it shows up on Stuck, the Wicked Library.
Yeah, they produced an audio version after it was published in Sanitarium.
So it's June 2015, yep.
Stuck was also featured
Sanitarium magazine, number 19, print and digital, March 2014.
Yeah, it's kind of old.
I do have to say, from what I've read of it so far, and of course I'm going to finish it, I have to say that I really do enjoy your writing style.
Oh, thank you.
The way that you portray horror. So yeah, I really like it. I was also looking at a couple of other things that you've appeared in, or you've been a part of, like the Shadows at the Door, an anthology.
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite projects that I've ever gotten the privilege to work on.
Would you actually like to talk about it?
Yeah, sure. it was just a fantastic project. So Shadows at the Door is run by this gentleman named Mark Nixon. Currently, he still runs Shadows at the Door, but he's since developed it into a podcast as well. It's like an audio drama. They're now working on season 2. But at the time, Shadows at the Door was just a website that essentially published ghost stories for people around the world. And he decided he was going to make an anthology, a printed one. He was trying to strike a balance of authors, so he didn't want it to be, a male-dominated anthology. He really wanted to get everyone's voice, and he wanted authors from, all corners of the globe. And I got really lucky. He had heard, of all things, he heard Stuck on the Wicked Library, and then he got in touch with me after it and was like, "Hey, did you maybe want to write something for this book?" And of course, I jumped on it because that's like the coolest question someone can ask you is, "Do you want to be in this book I'm publishing?" So I said, "Heck yes." Worked on that, and then he had asked my opinion on a few, other pieces that were in the book. I gave him some feedback, and then he actually invited me to co-edit along with Chris Holt and himself, and that was so much fun. That was a really cool project, getting to work with all these wonderful authors. And then I believe it was November of 2017. He had a big launch party for it in Newcastle, in the UK, and I got to join them for the big release. So that was really fun.
That sounds really exciting, actually.
It was.
Yeah, it looks like you actually had a few titles, actually, for Shadows at the Door, because at first I thought we were talking about Run, and then I'm looking down your list again, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I see one called Infected. I see another one called Hunger, and I see another one like Run, and then I think there was another one too. So clearly, was this? I can't really quite tell from the list, but was it like a monthly anthology thing that was being published, or
no? So there was a website that would print horror, like ghost stories and horror stories. So Infected and Hunger, as well as Stuck, had first appeared in like the early issues of Sanitarium. So I think it was 1921 and then like 23 or 25 that they all came out back in 2014 or 15. And then later they were reprinted on the website Shadows at the Door. And then when I got invited to do the print anthology, I wrote an original story called Run that had only been published there. And to this day, I haven't, let it be published anywhere else because it was just for that project. And that was a really, really fun story to write. It takes place in like the 60s in Montreal in a neighborhood called Point St. Charles, where my father grew up. So it was really, really cool getting to go through the history and his experiences growing up in that area and kind of, combing through his own personal adventures for inspiration on a story that I wanted to write there.
I have to ask, do you have a favorite piece that you've written, and why is it your favorite?
Ooh, oh man, I don't know if I have a favorite piece. I always feel like I do, and then I think about it, and I'm like, no, I really don't. I liked Run. It was a fun experience to write that story, especially because I did get to, learn a bit more about my dad and the neighborhood and, a bit of Montreal history, which was really cool.
Ooh,
what was that?
Based on true events.
I also really enjoyed working on No Filter, and that was published by WMP. It was my first attempt at doing a co-authored collection of horror. It was in a book called Read Only, a collection of digital horror. And I wrote it with M. Regan, who I got to meet on the Shadows at the Door project. It was just a lot of fun.
Oh, there it is, yep. The Read Only, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we can't find it on your thing, because all we see is Read Only, a collection of digital horror. We're like looking for the name that you just mentioned. Okay, yeah, we found it now.
So
I'm sorry, I seem to be lagging.
It's all good.
You're fine. So how did you get involved with Sanitarium magazine for your works?
So for the first ones, the earliest pieces was Barry Skellhorn. I just saw a submission call and ended up sending in the first piece, which was Stuck. And he seemed to like it, so I sent in some of the others, and he really liked them, and I was very fortunate that I got published by him.
That's amazing that he liked your work so much that he just kept publishing them. That's great.
Yeah, it was really crazy because it was, like I had said, my first attempt at really getting into horror. And so it was wild to get essentially back-to-back acceptance letters into this print publication.
I like that.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, do you still have a copy of it at all, or do you just...
Oh, yeah.
Did you frame it?
I didn't frame it. I've become one of those people who now has just a bookshelf, and one shelf on it is just reserved for anything that I have, been published in or that I have released. So it's really cool every year to see it get a little bigger.
Wow. Well, I also noticed, too, in your long list here, I need to scroll down, of course, but we see that you did a film called Follow.
Yeah, yeah, I did that a year and a half, 2 years ago.
2017, yep.
Yeah. Oh, so almost 3 years now.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
So
Yeah.
How was that for you? What was that like?
So that was a really cool experience. It was my first attempt getting into filmmaking. Up until that point, the medium felt kind of exclusive. I didn't have any background in film studies. I didn't have any expensive camera equipment. So the idea of putting a film together seemed impossible. It was, one of those lofty goals that felt out of my hands, And then I ended up speaking to my best friend, Georgia Papoulias, who helped co-write and co-direct the film with me. And essentially, we decided that it would be really cool to film a movie entirely on social media. That's why it's called Follow, a social media horror event. We ended up recording everything on smartphones, specifically iPhones, because that's what we all had. And we ended up writing the script so that the story would take place over 3 separate Snapchat accounts. So there was an account for the victim of the film. She's this woman who is an Instagram star. She's an influencer, or not so much Instagram, but more Snapchat at the time. There was another account that we filmed it through, and it was not really a rival, but this girl who knows our Insta-famous, starlet. And then we had, finally, the killer's account. So he's essentially stalking our protagonist all film long. And it was, one storyline that converged on 3 different accounts. At the time of the release, it was really interesting because we filmed everything live. So the audience was basically watching the story play out in real time. And eventually, once after Halloween had ended, we ended up editing all the footage together and releasing it as one short film.
Now, since I don't know where we could possibly watch it, but just out of curiosity, did you film it more like a found footage type of deal, or was it more like trying to be a traditional shot-wise?
No, it was definitely, it wasn't so much found footage. It also wasn't traditional. It essentially took place on social media. So each of the characters, if you go on Instagram or Facebook, you'll see like an individual story and it's them going about their day and recording things for their followers. Yeah. This is how the whole film was done.
So it's almost like if you've ever seen it, like an Unfriended type of thing. And what was the other one? I think there was another one, right? Or maybe Unfriended Dark Web. I don't remember.
Exactly. It was like that, except, because it was all on mobile phones instead of like a webcam, the characters were able to interact with each other and, venture outside of their homes. So at one point we have the protagonist and like the girl she dislikes. They end up meeting each other and they're both recording each other on their Snapchat stories at the same time. So you see the whole film basically playing out live on social media.
Oh, wow. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we could see that just to see how it plays out or whatever.
Well, it's right now it's on YouTube.
Oh.
Oh, it's on YouTube though. We're gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, we'll have to. Yeah.
It was edited together after it had been released. It was put out on Halloween, and that was done live across the social networks. And then after Halloween had ended, it took us it didn't take us. It took our editor, Sterling Azure Tipton, about a month to edit everything together and, get it all fitting the right aspect ratio for YouTube. And then we uploaded it a little while ago.
Yeah, isn't it always fun?
Thankfully, I did not have to deal with that.
You're lucky.
Would you like to tell us about Caribou Chronicles? What that is?
Yeah, so that one's not so much horror. It's a rural fantasy story. It's very Canadian, it's painfully Canadian. And it was co-written by myself and Chris Holtz. And he is the most British of men. So, essentially, it's just this comedy fantasy that takes place in the middle of nowhere, Canada.
That's very interesting too, because I tried clicking on it and I'm like,
it brings you someplace else.
It's so weird.
It's like, well, I don't know if I'm understanding it, but it's like go shopping, and then
no, definitely not.
Okay, so then
the address is all messed up because it takes you to a shopping page or whatever. Just so you know.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, so when you click on the Caribou Chronicles, it takes you to a shopping thing.
Oh, annoying.
Yeah, I would okay, maybe this is supposed to be a fashion thing that she started?
Oh my god, no.
She doesn't strike
no. It could honestly just be that for whatever reason the link is broken. But it's a book that's on Amazon.
Okay.
I have to look it up on Amazon then.
Yeah, we'll have to do that then. But yeah, just so you know, you might want to fix that link then.
Good to
know. We noticed, I think it was last year, you did publish, I think it was you published it, you can correct me too, it's Canadian Dreadful. Oh, no, you
I definitely did not publish that, but I was published in it.
Yes, I see it now. Yeah, I just corrected myself. Yeah, Century or Center Ice or something like that.
Yeah, so that was a story I wrote for Canadian Dreadful from Dark Dragon Publishing. And it's essentially a giant collection of Canadian horror from a bunch of different Canadian horror authors.
Wow. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of, let's see, I see. Oh, wow. You're in the book with Nancy then, too.
Yeah, Nancy Kilpatrick.
Yeah.
She's also from Montreal.
Oh, yeah, and one of our friends actually just interviewed her on the show, too. So she sounds like a really nice lady. And, wow. Yeah, I'll have to check this out now, too. Jeez, books, I swear.
Yeah, we have an ever-growing horror library.
So let me ask you this then, Caitlin. Are you gonna publish your own stories in a book?
Ooh, that's actually a really good question. I don't know. I have a collection that I'm working on right now, but I don't want to self-publish. That's so much work. So I'm hoping to
approach.
Yeah, depend on your approach.
Yeah, I still don't want to have to deal with it.
Well, Paul helped me because I actually write poetry.
Oh, nice.
Paul actually helped me with setting up to publish my book through, what was it, Lulu?
Lulu.
Yeah. So I have a book on Amazon of all my poetry that we went through Lulu to get me published.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because they do the self-publishing route, and quite frankly, I don't mind doing all the work, but I would just rather be able to keep everything in my name rather than, selling my soul to somebody else.
That is very valid.
Yeah. So I wouldn't mind having all the control for me, so that way I know what's going on versus somebody else
trying to change your vision.
Yeah, trying to change a vision that I specifically want. So,
which Paul also writes poetry too, but his is darker.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
I don't think I'd want to self-publish. I ended up, so after Barry Skellhorn was tired of Sanitarium Publishing, I ended up purchasing it with a couple of other colleagues, and we ended up running it for about a year. And the publishing was so just exhausting that I don't think I'd want to do it again.
Well, I guess it's not for everybody. You know?
No.
I don't know what to say to that.
She might like it better for somebody to do all the work for her, which some people are that way, anyways. But it's not like it's a bad thing.
No.
It's just like everybody is different. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, self-publishing can be honestly great. I think it's a really wonderful way, too, of diversifying the writing that's out there. Because if you're just going to these, literary giants who are controlling everything, then you're not really going to have diverse voices or even just diverse genres of literature. I think there's a lot of gatekeeping that goes on in publishing, and that is horrible. But at the same time, I think just spending the last 2 years dealing with it, I'm putting a break on myself.
Well, I mean, like I said, it is what it is, and I know self-publishing isn't for everybody, but some people would like the idea of self-publishing. And,
oh, for sure. Honestly, it is great.
Whatever floats their boat is what I say. Now, I just noticed this on your list, and I'm curious if there's a specific reason for this. Is one of your stories called Conqueror? But it looks like the O's are like zeros. And it was in I'm assuming an audio drama of some sort from the Wicked Library. And
yeah, they're definitely meant to be zeros, not O's.
It's a clever way to do a title.
Yeah.
Thanks. Well, the entire story essentially takes place online. It's about these gamers. And one of their handles is Conqueror. So they'd have that alternative spelling to it.
Ah, I see.
Clever.
That is clever.
Thank you. And it was probably one of the more experimental pieces I've done because the whole thing is in second person. So your story is being dictated to you. I really wanted whoever was listening to it to be able to embody that character and get in their mind frame. And I think all too often when we think of gaming and just video games in general and gamer culture, that a lot of times we associate it with just men. And I hated the idea of writing the story about this just generic guy who is playing video games and, getting miffed online about it. So
fair enough.
Now, let me ask you this. I don't know if anybody's ever asked you this question. I'm hoping it's not a dumb question.
No dumb questions.
But have you thought about taking all of your stories that you've written and combine them into one book?
I have. No one's asked me that question, first off.
Aha.
I've definitely thought about it, yeah. I might eventually. I mean, there's no reason not to.
Because I would still get that. Yeah. I would get that book just so I could just read all of them. Not that I wouldn't go out and get all the books that you're already involved in or whatever, but
that's a lot.
That's a lot of books.
That's an investment.
If we can even track them all down too. So.
Yeah, that's definitely that's quite the collection if you do that.
And speaking of, if you said Stuck was your first one you ever wrote, so now I'm curious about what is Stuck Part 2, which was printed or published it looks like as a digital version for Stuck Part 2 in the Living Paranormal magazine.
Oh yeah, it's still that story, but for the sake of their page count, they wanted to do it into 2 sections.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Definitely no sequels there.
Ooh. Ooh.
I mean, it ends with a pretty final note of something happening to her body.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I was looking at that too.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to come back from that.
Yeah, I would say. Meaning a very sizzling end.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So, can you tell me? I'm kind of curious. Can you tell me a little bit about Mr. Perfect from Living Paranormal magazine? I'm curious.
Yeah. Oh man. So this one is just it's a short horror story that was written for a live performance of The Wicked Library, and then it was picked up by Living Paranormal. It's also, I wouldn't say it's one of my first ones, but it is one of my earlier works. So I don't necessarily know if it holds up to maybe some of the other stuff that I've written in the last couple of years. But essentially the whole story is just, it's based off of this neighbor that I grew up with that we used to call Mr. Perfect. He was determined to have the best yard, the best lawn in the back, the best front door painting. Like, it was nuts, this man. So that's kind of what this story is about.
Oh, so he's like he's got like wicked OCD, has to be a perfectionist. Everything has to be a certain way type of deal.
Yeah, like he's one of those finicky neighbors that you don't want to move next to. Like, he'll raise your property value, but he'll make your life hell.
Yeah, not my cup of tea.
No. We were so happy when he moved away.
Hey, can we all say barbecue tomorrow? It'll be the next door. It'll be in the backyard.
Yeah.
Okay, I see another one I'm curious about.
Uh-oh.
Full Moon Run. You had it published in Sanitarium magazine?
Yeah, it's one of my older pieces and probably the only poem that I've ever had published.
Really? Mm. Wow.
Yeah. It's this big experiment in form poetry. So the whole thing is about this person who's, they're a werewolf, so they're transforming during the full moon. And so the form of the poem itself, the words, the spacing, all of that is supposed to reflect their physical and mental journey during this time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I kind of want to get it and read it.
Yeah, good luck with that, because apparently it's currently unavailable.
Currently, it's going to be, so actually all the Sanitarium issues are being released in the next year again. One Sanitarium changed hands from Barry Skellhorn. All of the back issues of Sanitarium were unfortunately taken down. And even though Sanitarium Publishing is no more, the old back issues are ideally going to be going up in the next year. But that's out of my hands, and that's in the hands of Ian Sputnik. He's the gentleman in charge of that right now.
Well, I would love to at least read that poem somehow.
Feel free to let me know and I can email it to you later.
Oh, I would love to read it. Yeah.
Yeah, just email it later and I'll shove it down Tessa's face. I mean,
Oh, nice.
It's not that long. I don't think you'll have to work too hard through it.
Oh.
Oh, that's okay. You could always tell Caitlin how we met and how I murdered you in the bathtub. So
yeah, we can show that later.
Oh yeah, that's a funny story. So how Paul and I actually met was we met through a mutual friend of ours. She's a photographer, and I was experimenting with trying out modeling, and Paul was also there on the same day working on something with our friend Allison, who's the photographer, and they were planning to do a Faces of Death.
Yep.
And I was actually Paul's murderess. I murdered him in the bathtub with a double-bladed fantasy axe.
My own double-bladed fantasy axe. Thank you.
Yes.
Well.
I murdered you with your own axe.
That is a decision.
That's right.
We have photographic evidence of this.
I was supposed to get murdered out in the snow, but the rain took all the snow away, so then it had to come to a plan B.
Oh, the bathtub played out quite nicely. So that's actually how Paul and I actually met.
Very romantic.
Oh, yes. I slayed him. Quite literally.
Waka waka. Yes, that was an interesting day for sure.
Yes.
And I'm going to say, I'm sorry, listeners, that you've already heard the story probably a few episodes back, but it's okay.
We wanted Caitlin to kind of hear a little bit of our backstory of.
So, Caitlin, my question to you now is, what's going on with you currently? Are you writing anything? Do you want to write another film to do? What can we expect for you in 2020?
Oh man, so 2020 has already been kind of a wild year. Other than being a writer, I actually am a tattoo apprentice. So I've been kind of doing that for a while now. And getting more and more into art and trying to experiment with horror in general, I've kind of set my sights on possibly writing a graphic novel this year. No idea if I'll be finished it this year, but I definitely want to dabble in that. I'm also working on a young adult fantasy novel. Still not horror, but I'm really excited to play around with the genre. I think there's a lot that young adult novels offer, well, young adults and audiences in general. And I'd love to try my hand at it, especially since it really was Tamora Pierce and fantasy that got me into writing in general. I am, like I said, I am working on some short horror for this year, so not sure when those are coming out. I know I have a story, it's supposed to be coming out this month. I'm not sure if it's already out yet or is coming out soon. But it's from Deadlight Publishing. It's in the collection called Not Just a Pretty Face. And I'm really excited for that one. It's one of my favorite stories. So keep your eyes peeled for that anthology to come out this month. And a really exciting project that I'm working on that I cannot wait to release is actually a podcast called Fedorable. It is nothing to do with horror. It is not remotely related to that. But it's going to be looking at essentially different kinds of online cultures and cultures in nerd spaces and their interactions with women. And that should be coming out later this spring. It's with a really wonderful co-host. I'm not going to give his name out just yet in case he's keeping that under wraps for now. But you could essentially find the profile on Instagram at neckbeardfancy.
Ooh.
I'm quite intrigued by all of this, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.
Thank you.
And speaking of which, for the listener too, Caitlin, is where can people keep up to date with everything that's going on that is coming out and want to know future updates and whatnot?
There's always my website, caitlinmarceau.ca, but I would be lying if I said I updated that as often as I should. Your best bet is to follow me on social media. I'm really active on Facebook and Instagram, somewhat on Twitter, and my handle is just my full name, so just Caitlin Marceau.
That's easy enough then, and I'll make sure to have the links for the episode note down below so people can just click on them and find you that way. And if I don't do it, then people, you need to just get on me and say, hey, the links are not there, what the hell? And I'll be like, oh, I am so sorry. Let me fix this right now.
It's pretty easy to find me, honestly. If you just hit me up in Google, I think I'm like the first who pops up.
I mean, why not?
Easy enough.
Yeah.
There we go.
Do you have anything else, babe?
What does women in horror mean to you?
Diversity. It's a huge opportunity to diversify the authors that are out there. I think a lot of the time when we think about women in horror, it can be the same authors over and over and over again. Admittedly, I find I do see the same authors talked about every year, which is good, though. I think it's nice to see these people getting promoted, especially, the ones who, work hard and keep writing. But I also think women in horror like this particular month is a great opportunity to encourage new writers in the genre and get more women to write horror. We deal with so much in our daily lives. 2020 and the world in general, it's kind of on fire and a bit of a garbage hole right now. So what better way to celebrate that than with actual scary things from a group of diverse writers? I think it's a great opportunity to get people engaged in the genre, to get people writing, to get people having these conversations, and to have more people taking up more space in media. I think that's so important to have different voices out there.
I could not agree any
with you more.
Yes. I for some reason I almost wanted to be like, I could not agree with you anymore. Just like, wait, what? Why do I want to say that word?
Sometimes I have to finish his sentences and convey the words that he's trying to convey.
Yeah, because my brain just likes to just say things, and then afterwards, after I say them, I'm like, why did I just say that? But I don't think we all really know why we open our big mouth sometimes and just say the wrong thing, and we're like, oh, that's not what I meant.
I live that.
But is there anybody too, Caitlin, within the women in horror that really inspire you, encourage you, that you look up to as well, within the horror genre?
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of them. Like I said, I love Kelly Armstrong. I think she's probably one of the best female horror writers out there. I love that she's also, Canadian. I think that's, again, so important to grow the Canadian horror canon. Gwendolyn Kist is super cool. I got to work with her on Sanitarium, and she's come so far, so kudos to her. Nancy Kilpatrick, another Montreal author. I will always celebrate that. And Jessica McHugh, she always has a bunch of cool books that are coming out. I feel like she's always doing something interesting. If I'm not mistaken, she has a book of blackout poetry that is coming out soon, so that is a really exciting time for us.
That looks and sounds amazing.
Well, it's her, so it will be.
Is there anything that you would recommend to us or our listeners
to check out?
Of
whether it be, just in general? Book, film, music, whatever.
Ooh, oh man. I mean, feel free to read any of my things. No, but there's actually a couple of really funny horror books out there that I discovered not long ago, and I cannot stop reading them. But one of them is called World War Moo and Apocalypse Cow, and they're hilarious and still somewhat scary, so definitely check those ones out. I'm blanking on the author right now, but they're funny. They're really enjoyable, and they're still kind of scary. I haven't seen any great horror movie lately, so I don't know if I'd have anything to offer on that one. Yeah. I mean, right now I can't stop watching The Witcher on Netflix, so that's sort of my inescapable.
Your binge go-to.
Yeah, I can't stop. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I've already seen the full season that's out, and that hasn't stopped me from rewatching the season again.
That sounds like me with Penny Dreadful.
I keep meaning to check that out, and I've still never seen it.
Oh God, I've watched the series 3 times over, and then Paul actually got me the complete series for, what was it? My birthday?
I don't remember.
I forget exactly, but he ended up getting me the full series on DVD, so now I have that at my disposal.
Oh man. Oh, and also, if anybody misses Buffy the Vampire Slayer, if anyone is a fan of that, there's Boom Studios or Boom Comics. I think it's Boom Studios though. They do comics, individual issues that have been coming out for a while now. And they just had this giant Hellmouth event through the new Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel comics. And those are wicked fun if anybody, is pining over the old, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I actually really like them, actually.
We actually, I don't know if it was this past year or last year, the year before or whatever, but we actually had a free comic book day thing where I think they did a crossover between Firefly and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You remember that?
Yes.
Could we grab a copy of that? That was actually quite interesting.
That is so cool.
Well, Caitlin, I can't think of anything else, but is there anything that we have not, what you talk about that you would personally would like us to know?
No, just tune into Fedorable when it comes out this spring.
Yeah, so you hear that? Do it. This spring. Do it now.
And it's Fedorable?
It is Fedorable.
That's a very interesting title, too.
Yeah.
It is.
So that means keep up with Caitlin here by clicking one of the links below if they're there, which I hope they're there, because I will make sure they're there, and we're done there. All right.
That's a lot of theirs. Don't mind him.
And thank you guys so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. It was a pleasure having you. Would love to talk to you again in the future with when you do more of your projects.
Yeah, definitely. Just
Looking forward to it.
Just knock on our Skype door and be like, let me in.
I bring you more horror.
I'll bring you more goodies to talk about. Ooh. And then we'll just be like, all right, let's do this. Nom, nom, nom. Got my popcorn. We got soda pop. Let's do this. What we got intrigued for us this time?
Can't wait.
I will definitely let you know what I think about your poem.
Please do.
And I will also let you know about, well, we will both let you know about your film that you directed.
Yes, follow. Don't forget, listeners, apparently it's on YouTube.
So go check
it. It is, yeah. If you check out Follow a Social Media Horror Event, it is on YouTube.
Aha, you heard it from the source.
There you go. And there should be a link for that as well in the description, too. So, like I said, I'm going to do my damnest to put everything down in the description below.
The third time he said that. I hope you guys heard it.
Everything will be down in the bottom. Meow.
Okay, so far. Okay, I think they get it.
Meow. All right.
Oh, goodness.
Well, that's all the time that we have with Caitlin, because otherwise we could just keep rambling on and come up with other crap that
we could pick her brain more.
And we don't want to exhaust her, because I don't want to exhaust everything that she had done, because
and she's probably creeped out right now by the fact that she's being recorded by everything. So
everything is watching.
Everything is watching her.
So don't forget that you are always being watched, listener. It's just like I always say, but I'm not going to do it now because it's going to be creeping Caitlin out, and I don't think I've actually ever made it public of what I usually do when we test our mic. But it's this stupid, funny crap. But,
it's quite stupid and funny.
Yeah. Anyway, my name was Paul Dolsky, and I was the co-host for tonight.
And I was Tessa Baker, your hostess for tonight.
Oh, smooth. And then we had our special guest, Caitlin Marceau. So thank you for joining us once again.
Thanks again, guys.
And as always, everybody, make sure you lock your fucking door, go to the window and lock those two.
Shut your curtains.
Shut your damn curtains. Make sure you, shotgun your alarm clock, because
what?
It will not stop ringing. And make sure you have plenty of body bags, because we're going to have a barbecue at your next door, at the backyard. So until next time, everybody,
stay
scary.